Hey, what's going on, YouTube? How are you? Hiker Dave NE here. Thank you so much for coming by. I want to talk about something. I got a phone call from a friend yesterday. He said, hey, come on down. Meet me at a local gin mill. We'll have a couple pops and a couple shooters. I said, absolutely. I went down there and we sat down. It rained yesterday, so we both had the day off. I work outside currently, and so we got kind of to sipping and drinking. We're talking. He knows about my passion for Bigfoot, and he knows about my channel and stuff like that. And as a matter of fact, a friend of mine had a sighting back when he was in his late teens that he told me about over the summer, about 6 months ago, kind of right around when I started this channel. We kind of had the discussion, and we never spoke about it after that. So I show up to, we're belly up, right, having a couple of beers, and after about an hour and a half, we're just sitting there talking about life and stuff like that, and our families and work and such. And then there's a silence for a couple of minutes, and I'm kind of looking up at the TV, and he looks over at me and he goes, you know that Bigfoot channel that you have and that you're always out in the woods and stuff. He goes, even though I don't know what I saw all those years ago, how come there's no body? He says, I just can't believe that Bigfoot exists. There's never been a body found. Well, I have ammunition for that. And I always wait for someone to say that to me. So I tell him about Oregon, not Oregon. I've learned from you guys telling me how to pronounce it. In Oregon, the Columbus Day storm, there was some hunters found a strange body underneath a tree that was hit by lightning. It goes something like that. Please don't quote me on that. I made a video on that, but I don't recall exactly the year. It might have been late 70s. I'm not positive. Again, I told him about the Mount St. Helens cover-up, and bodies were evacuated from that horrible disaster, in that the powers that be keep that under wraps, right? And he's just kind of shaking his head. And I said, listen, I understand your skepticism. And even as I explained this to him about bodies have been found and the powers that be, I'm not going to just label it government, the powers that be, whoever's out there that's in charge of keeping this from the public, takes these bodies. I brought up the Miller document, and I've made a video on the Miller document as well. Be careful believing in the Miller document, because it's kind of, who knows who put this out there. That's a long story. I made a video about that as well. I may put that right up here so you guys could click on that if you're interested. So as I'm arguing the point, and I am very passionate about it, and I truly believe that bodies will be taken away, that it's a thing, right? Forestry Service, Park Services, and stuff like this. When they come across something like that, they bring in the proper authorities that come in and take care of the situation, so to speak. And even as I was explaining this to him, there is a fraction in the back of my mind that questions that same exact thing. Now, what he was saying is, you could come up with this and that bodies have been found. Why isn't it? He never read it in a newspaper or saw it in the news. I said, well, in that case of Oregon, that was in the news. And he's like, well, how come nobody took that story and ran with it and made a big deal of it? And I said, because it is my belief that these things are kept on the hush because of the potential firestorm that would follow. And my reasoning, my belief is religion, guys. That's my belief, would be religion. The Christianity, specifically, growing up a Christian myself, I went to church 4 days a week, strong religious upbringing. And the Bible, everything we know and are taught about the Bible says nothing about Bigfoot. So for us, God created man, right? And it was good. And to think that there's another creature out there that's not on the evolutionary chain talked about in the Bible, I think it would scare a lot of people. I don't think it has to do with parks closing because Bigfoot is discovered to be real. I don't think it's the lumber industry. Like at one time I thought that it would have to do, this country makes millions and millions, billions with a B, from our lumber industry and cutting trees down. And at one time I thought the possibility that the reason why the powers that be keep Sasquatch a secret is because people would say, stop cutting down the trees. Let's figure out this species, its habitat, and let's save it and protect it. I am convinced now, and my theory on this could change as of next week. And if it does, you'll be the first to know. I do think it's religion. I think it's a really, really slippery slope when we start talking about a being that walks and thinks like we do, that happens to live on the fringes of reality, so to speak, because so many people just think that it's a joke. And to have my own self, just for a fraction of a second, a little tiny piece of me, having never eyewitnessed a Bigfoot, I've never seen one, almost for a second, it made sense. Why? How come? Why not? Why are they not part of our society? Why are they not taught in schools? And I brought up to my skeptic friend, who actually had a sighting, which is really odd, that he still doesn't believe what he saw. I tried to get him on my channel to interview him, and he said, no, he's not doing that. That's not happening. So I'm not going to tell you his account of what happened unless I have his permission. But even in our own textbooks in school, this is a big shocker, spoiler alert, it's not all true. Okay, Christopher Columbus did not discover America. He may be the first one to write about it, but there was people already here. Native American Indians were already here when Christopher Columbus came, and we wiped out, we made a whole mess of that, and that's for a whole entirely different video. But interesting to sit down and talk to somebody willing to at least talk about it, willing to at least ask questions. You know what I'm saying? Really second-guessed myself was a strange feeling that even as it came up, the words come out of my mouth that bodies have been discovered, Mount St. Helens, Oregon, and there are other cases where bodies have been found or reported, and it's never in mainstream media or the mainstream news. So I found myself, as I was backing up my own argument, a tiny bit of me was questioning, that's a great question. I've never seen a real photo of a Sasquatch body. And, I don't know I would want to. I don't want to see one dead laying on the ground. I'd like to see one in its own, out in nature, in its own habitat. Maybe curious about me and checking me out, just as curious about a Sasquatch as I am. Anyways, interesting. And I wanted to share that with you. That just happened to me yesterday. And I thought it was interesting that even in my own mind, as 100% convinced that I am that Sasquatch exists, I had that little flicker in the back of my mind of, what am I doing? Am I chasing ghosts here? Am I chasing a myth, some kind of legend that doesn't exist? And then I snap myself out of it, because of what I see in the forests, in the woods around my area, and when I hike and go out into these forested areas, the things that I see, if there's no Bigfoot, you could call it whatever you want. Something is leaving prints. Something is out there marking its territory, throwing things at me. What's throwing things at me? Something had to have a thumb to throw that pine cone at me over the summer. Something had to have a thumb. Something growled at me on more than one occasion when I've been out hiking. Something's doing that. If it's not Bigfoot, then we just won't call it Bigfoot. That's fine with me. But something is out there leaving this trace evidence that it's there or has at least passed through a certain area. So some more food for thought, you guys. It's funny because I've been waiting for somebody to talk to me about Sasquatch and have the no bodies theory brought up. And it was funny that I felt fully armed and ready to argue the no bodies found part of this entire thing. And I doubted myself as I was arguing my point. And I find that interesting because I fully believe, and yet that I had that tiny, minute second. Anyways, you guys, I just come back from a hike. The sun is going down. That old timer that hikes out here sometimes with the 2 canes, he's out there again. So I'm going to sit here and wait for him. And I have found out I'm not the only one that does that. I see a car over here, and I think there's someone else that's waiting for him to come out. So I'm going to sit here for a little while. But thank you so much for clicking. I would appreciate if you guys are out there, you see this video, if you have any newspaper clippings or documents that I can refer to, besides the Oregon newspaper clipping of the Columbus Day Sasquatch found under a tree, please just refer me to it. I'm trying to compile as much as I can as far as even eyewitness accounts that are in a newspaper clipping or a story somewhere that I can say to somebody, here, look at this, check this out, and refer them somewhere. So I don't feel like such a buffoon when all I could come up with is Mount St. Helens and Oregon. You know, those 2 specific things. Thank you so much, guys, for clicking, and I'll definitely see you soon on the next one.